welcome to the Oil and Water podcast, where two very different elements collide and somehow we create social, spiritual, amazing fire together. I'm Carlos, aka Alpha Carlos, also known as El Mero Mero. How you like those apples?
I love those apples, brother. My name is Omega Joe, a.k.a. the priest in the brown robe, a.k.a. the entire wheel of archetypes. We could be here for the whole show with the AKAs, but I think we're going to get going. Let's rock it.
I love it, man. Listen, fam, together, everybody that's watching, you're in for a treat tonight. This is a new series that we're starting, and I'll tell you what, man, we're going to stir it up. We're going to get into some deep conversations. We're going to talk about faith. We're going to talk about social issues. We're going to talk about psychological issues. We're going to talk about our own personal issues. And then at some point, right, we're going to come up with the meaning of it all. And my hope is that wherever we are able to create some sort of tension, some sort of contrast, because let's face it, brother, you're light, I'm not. There's going to be some friction, right? And there's going to be some disagreeing. There's going to be some variances of perspective and opinion. And that's all good because that's going to create some very authentic points of views. And so all that to say, this is not going to be your average podcast, right? This is going to be a place where we're going to answer questions. We're going to talk about, you know, it's healthy to have some friction in life. It's healthy to have some paradox in life, and we welcome that. And transformation comes from that, from acknowledging the fact that we're not all the same. We don't all agree. And quite honestly, some of us need a lot of help, right?
I mean,
myself
absolutely.
included.
100%. I need all the help I can get. And as a matter of fact, you've been a fantastic source of help in my life, Carlos. I wouldn't be sitting here today on this microphone with this background doing this ministry if it wasn't for your help in my life. And that's something I definitely want to talk about. This is the origins episode. So this is like kind of like, who's that guy? Who's this guy over here? But really, it isn't about kind of us more. It's really about the fact that we live in a culture today right now that is super superficial, but underneath the surface of that, there's some realness that's just welling up. Like people are hungry and thirsty. They want more than they're getting on Sunday morning at church. A lot of people don't go to church or don't go to any kind of religious establishments. I believe for that very reason is just there's got to be a little bit more than sit in this seat, pay this money, do these programs, do this thing. They're just feeling it. And that's because I believe we're coming upon a time right now in history where it's like a culmination. Everything's coming together. Like there's so much that overlap everywhere. And that's why what Carlos said in the opening is probably the most powerful way you could open something like this, by talking about the authentic disagreements. We're not allowed in many spaces to we can disagree up to a point, but there's a certain thing. Like if I go to a particular, my background, as you'll find out, is in both the New Age, philosophical, psychological movement as a child, and then later on, I become a Christian theologian. So I kind of can see both ends there. But like if I go into certain churches, there's just I can say things up to a point. And then we kind of cross into what we would have the letter of the law that's in place. But Jesus himself said, well, the letter kills and the spirit brings life. And so the only way we can bring life, really, because we're kind of fumbling around in the dark together as a species. Look at the world right now. It's in the dark and we're in it and we're at the center of it. The only way we can do it is allow all the ideas to come to the top. Like Carlos on this show, I want their audience to see all your darkness, bro. I don't just want me to see your darkness. I want them to see your darkness. I'm going to do my best to bring that darkness out of you. You understand? And I have
it's
a
right
way
here,
of doing
bro.
that.
It's all over me. What are you talking about? It's right here.
Yeah, and see my so it's
and I appreciate you saying that, man. The reality is that I think that as a society, we have been conditioned, whether intentionally or unintentionally, right? And there's a lot of crazy conversations in the ether about whether or not we're being programmed, right? Whether or not we're being intentionally conditioned to react certain ways to certain social uh, environments. And so I totally agree with you, man. In this day and age, it's almost like you're not allowed to disagree. You're not allowed to have a different perspective. And even in places that are considered to be safe, that are supposed to be safe, like a church or like other nonprofit associations that are geared towards bringing people together, when you bring an outside perspective into these groups, sometimes you do become the pariah. You do become the outcast. You become that person that, you know what? That guy, that Carlos guy, he dresses pretty fancy, but I don't like the way he thinks. And you're labeled as a bit of a dangerous person because of that disagreement that you might have with them. So listen, today it's about getting to know each other. It's about allowing our audience to get to know who is going to be talking to them. And, you know, I came up in a very, very colorful environment, man. I was brought up by a single mother. A lot of people know my story, you know, an immigrant who was raised in, you know, loving home, very supportive environment. But there was a lot of questions in my mind as I grew up. A lot of questions, a lot of spiritual questions, a lot of relationship questions. Growing up without a daddy messes people up sometimes. And so growing up, I didn't always quite understand where I fit in, right? And it's not so much that I felt lonely or alone. I knew I had a lot of people that had my back. I knew that my family cared for me, but I didn't know exactly what my purpose was in this world. And I'll be frank with you, man. At the age of 14, and I wrote this, I'm a former gospel hip hop artist from a band called God's New Creation. Later, I did a solo album under my birth name, Carlos Alberto. You like the way I roll my R's there?
Carlos Alberto. Come on. The audience is going to know. And you're going to be back on the mic. And I was a hip hop artist, whatever prefix you want to put. You are a hip hop artist and a pop star too. Carlos wasn't a small one. No, I'm gonna interrupt you for a second here. Carlos was not a small artist. Like I was on a small label or whatever the case may be. He was on big stages, jumping around in front of a lot of fans and all that other kind of stuff. And he actually had the talent. A lot of people in the Christian music industry are there because it's a smaller pool. Their faith isn't authentic. No, he's one of the few right there that were there and deserved to be there and wasn't there for compromise and could have been on other stages outside and decided to compromise that for the Christian, you know, thing, doing his hip hop and stuff. We're going to be rolling that back out. All right. There you go.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. But, you know, even with all of that and having a really creative outlet, at the age of 14, I still had what I consider to be a pretty monumental mental health crisis that happened to me and in me. And I just didn't quite know how to respond. I remember thinking to myself, Joe, like, dude, is this all there is to life? Like, I wasn't excited about life. I wasn't excited about living. And I'm 14 years old, right? Where most kids are actually loving life. They're enjoying life. They know, or they're getting to know who they are, and they're having a good time. And I remember just not having that clarity. Really, it was kind of a weight. I didn't know what it was, you know, and I got into a lot of trouble as a result. I made a lot of bad decisions as a kid. And man, I'll tell you what, it wasn't until I found God that I was really able to plug into what I considered to be my purpose in life. And contrary to what you might be thinking now, I don't necessarily think my purpose was necessarily to write songs or to perform in front of people, or to be a businessman like I am today. But I feel like my purpose now is to be authentic and to be an image of what God is, right? And a lot of people might disagree with me about who God is. I might have a very different opinion and a very different view about who God is. And that's why I was inspired to do this podcast, because I really want to lay it out on the table. And throughout the series that we go through, we are going to lay out different social issues, different political issues, different spiritual concepts that I think we're going to find that even you and I disagree on, right? And it's all healthy and it's all good, because I think it's going to help us to sharpen each other and help us to find a better way together, right? Harmoniously, in a way that encourages one another, and not in a way that's going to cast one another out, not in a way that we're going to make each other feel like a pariah or an outcast because we disagree. Is that fair?
Oh, 100%. I'll add two things right on that. So, what you talked about when you were 14, having that existential issue about the meaning of life and the feeling of more and all that other kind of stuff. That is what theologians, mystics would call the dark night of the soul. And to have that at an early age means that you're pretty much like it's when, we have two components according to psychologists. My dad was Dr. Nathan Schwartz-Salant, Jungian analyst of a mystical sect, dealing a lot with the unseen, a lot with the occult. I've grew up a lot with that. And what he would say is that your ego would be located, if we were going to think of it that way, like in the head. And then the rest of your body is going to be kind of like your spirit or your dragon or your cellular intelligence. Like if you think about it, like you don't tell a white blood cell to go attack something in your liver, it just does it. And that takes a mind and intentionality. We can disagree on what kind of mind that is and who's operating it and all that. But I don't think anybody would disagree that there's some kind of intention in our body that knows how to do things a heck of a lot better than we do in our head. A lot faster, kind of like a computer. It's almost like we are a computer program in a sense, right? I'm not going to get into simulation theory, but this is to say that to have this at 14, what it means is that this connection was trying to be made. It's like there was something sending you a signal saying more, Carlos. No, a little more. And you're getting that signal. But up here, it's like we're trying to align with it. And there's a point where a lot of people go into a collapse and they face these issues. And this is a big thing in my story, too. Kind of around the same time, 12, 13 is when I faced that myself. A lot of people have to wait until they're 60, 70, until they go through life. And it's one of those things where it's like, oh, my goodness, like, what's the real meaning of this? Like, I'm not my name. Like I don't unmount whatever the spirit is in my body, whatever the electrical force that powers this is not my name. It's not my job. I'm not a gospel artist. That's not who I am. I'm you're not even a businessman. Like at the end of the day, like you do business, you're good at business, but that's not who you are. Like when you close your eyes and you go off to dream and all that other kind of stuff, who you are is that, right? It's him. And we could even say it's not really, you couldn't put a sex to it, because if you left your body, what are you? You going to take your penis with you? So like all of those things that we designate on who we are never satisfied. And it was, I believe, many church theologians said it. Augustine, I believe, said it. Then later was repeated a lot during the Reformation. And it was said that there is a God-shaped hole in the human heart. A God-shaped hole. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. And it sometimes takes tragedy and catastrophe to get to that place. So I think that we both are very blessed in that sense and regard. And then on the topic of the disagreements, and yeah, trust me, we got no sacred cows here. So any topic's coming up and we can talk about it, no matter what it is. And that's it. But I think one agreement that I think we should share with the audience is this is being done by two people who are aware that truth is the highest priority. So if I said something to Carlos that maybe shook his view and stung the ego a little bit, like, whoa, I've been teaching this for 5 years. You're dealing with a man right over here that will say, hold on. That's something to consider, because he values the truth over the ego. So anybody who's you think you can just start an oil and water podcast in your living room, sure, but you want to come to an agreement first that truth is of the highest value. And the only way to do that is I can't be listening to Carlos with a no. I can't be programmed to like, what's he saying wrong so I can snap on it. I need to listen to the man with a yes posture, so I get everything in. So even if I'm not agreeing with him, like, I can see where he came up with that. Interesting. And therefore, we're going to find on most of these topics that it's not a clean cut. It's not going to be like, oh, well, score one for the bald white guy, score another one for the Mexican over there. It's not like that. It's more kind of like, well, I think Joe might be 60% right on this, and Carlos is about 40% right on this. So if Joe removed maybe this out of that, put this over here, then they would go over there. And so it's always kind of like, it's not a neat thing. So I think the oil and water is a great symbol for that. If you pour oil into water, it kind of goes all over the place. You pour what? It's kind of like a mushy kind of thing that never really sinks. But the Chinese yin yang, think about that, the light and the dark coming together. We all want to talk about the light. Like, we all want to talk about, if you have 5 minutes to tell the world who you are, you're going to try to put your best 5 minutes on that you possibly can. But what the world really needs to see is, who are you when it gets bad? Like, who are you when your chemical imbalance is off? Who are you when you can't set up your microphone and your earphones and stuff like that? Like we had a little offset story for the first one right there. Came through with the big one. Quantum mechanics specialist Joe Salant, who knows everything happens for a reason. Yeah, whatever. So that's one of those are two things I think is important for the audience to know, is that if you're out there with that question, if you're thinking about the big issues and they're plaguing your life, and if your friends are all just kind of consumed with the small stuff, consider yourself blessed, because each one of your friends are going to have to run into that experience at some time, and usually it takes catastrophe. And for me, it just took, like, I grew up in a very intellectual household. My dad, Dr. Nathan Schwartz Salant, has wrote 8 books. He's directly from the Carl Jung Institute in Switzerland, and perhaps, in my opinion, the best Jungian analyst in the world when he was alive. He wrote the order-disorder paradox, tying in that kind of light and dark. And my father would say that I got that from my father, is that if you want to know the most about anybody's shadow as possible, and the only way to do that is to be welcoming and to be receiving, but not to tolerate it as normative. You don't want to tolerate somebody's shadow, because their shadow is just the bottom of their light. It's just they might be the darkest Satan, but C.S. Lewis says that the darkest Satan produces the brightest angel. It just goes on. It's like it's a sliding scale. So as bad as you think you are, and the worst that you've ever done in your life, we have to realize, according to my dad, that we need to own that. But we can't be like, okay, well, that's who I'm going to be going forward. But the only way that gets revealed is in an authentic setting. That's why authenticity almost made me cry when you said that is who you are. That's what we are. We're authentic spirit. Everything is spirit. And so, like, when I say everything is spirit, I mean everything is vibration. We'll get into that. This microphone right here is created out of atoms. Atoms itself, like, if you take an atom, from the nucleus to the electron cloud, could be like the space between, where I'm sitting in Prosper, Texas, about 5 miles from Dak Prescott's house, all the way down to Houston. You'd have your first electron. Like, it's a giant space. And so if you took an electron microscope and stuff, you see matter as a cloud. Like, it's all a cloud. And so we have to understand that we want to get in a coherence with that, raise our vibration. The only way we can do that is an authentic setting where people are allowed to say who the heck they were or who the heck they are and what they're struggling with at the moment. And if I'm coming at you with a posture like, look, Carlos, I want to know everything about you. I think you've sinned. Okay. I think you've sinned in your life. And I think there's several things we need to weed out about that. I think, from me, from a higher level, speaking down to you, I'm going to tell you this. I need to rebuke you for that sin. And what else is going on? You're going to close off. You're just going to say, I'm dealing with some kind of religious guy, or he thinks he's better than me, or he thinks he's better than me on this issue. You're going to give a very sanitized version, if anything at all. And so the Bible gives pretty accurate instructions about what to do with that. We first realize that any sin or any distortion of truth, any kind of shadowy evil that we have in our life and stuff like that, must first exist in me first before I can see it in you. So it might not be exactly the same kind of distortion, but I have to have in my heart an openness that I got to take the plank out of my eye, the log out of my eye, before I can remove the speck from yours. And so I need to come in a posture like that. You know what I mean?
So let's shift a little bit here, my man. So I heard, as I'm hearing you talk about your origin story, about, being raised in an intellectual household, Finish that story for us. Like, what did that do
Oh,
to
yeah.
you as a kid? Do you feel like that was an environment where you could thrive relationally, spiritually, certainly
Well,
intellectually, right? You had great models there, but finish your story, your
yeah.
childhood and where you ended up.
So yeah, I was born in New York City, August 23rd, 1980, 6:20 p.m. My mom also a very pretty high-tech intellectual, Russian literature professor, who decided to go into psychology, and that's where she met my dad, kind of like at a Harvard offshoot. And they had always they had kind of bred me, so to speak, based on astrology, to be connected as a bringer of the age of Aquarius. So I mean, you're talking about deep kind of astrological connections, conceiving me at a certain time, and then so I've had that's like deep into my essence as to who I am. This idea that energy goes everywhere and that we can kind of direct it and all that stuff based on heavenly bodies and our DNA and things like that inside. So I was hatched, so to speak, as a dragon of Aquarius, on this date. But they really didn't like when as a kid, I would demonstrate such an unnaturally high energy of darkness. Like it was very weird, the stuff that would happen around me. And there's a lot of different theories as to why that would be, but I was a very difficult child. And my father, he didn't really want to teach me anything. He was like, this guy's high powered. I have a lot of knowledge. I give this guy this. And he's like, my dad was quite scared of me. And my mom
And you were difficult in the
yeah.
sense of unmanageable. You were difficult in a sense of like really hyper. Qualify that a little bit for me.
Well, I mean, my dad said that I had pretty much every mental diagnosis in the book as soon as I got old enough to diagnose, especially multiple personalities, ADD, what they now know as ADHD, bipolar disorder, just the whole thing. But my dad's perspective on it was interesting. He never saw these diagnoses as anything other than the shadows of something great. So something of like all these diagnoses, you take a bipolar person and they're at their high spot, they can do some pretty awesome stuff, then they crash. And he's like, well, I think my son, if he just flowed on his intuition and didn't have too much knowledge in his head, so he wasn't being really mean by it. He was like, he's kind of got this stuff in him and it'll work out at one point in time in his life. And I just want to keep my hands off of this kind of thing because he's got a lot of stuff. Like I'd have things like when I was I'd be always very sensitive to words when I was a kid, like the taxi, we grew up in New York City. So we took a lot of taxis. Taxi driver would be like, hey, do I pull up to the brown awning over there? And I'd be like, no awning. Like the word awning just ringed in my head. It was like some demon in the back seat. You know what I mean? Like, awning,
Interesting.
like that kind of stuff, right? And so like my dad would be like, what is going on? Like even in all of his time in psychology, he hadn't really seen that kind of like, and I'd be out like passionate about it. You know what I mean? If we'd cross like the street and there'd be like a bulldozer there, I'd be like, on it, and I got to get on that thing, so they're going up to construction workers like, hey, can you let my son get in the seat? And construction workers in New York, they love that stuff, man. They love me. They're like,
can you let my son climb the tower real quick? Go up to the 100th floor. He wants to on it. So as I'm hearing you talk, it's really interesting because I have two thoughts. Number one is I've always believed that, and I have verbalized this to my wife in the past about our children and sometimes how their most frustrating attributes, those of you that are parents, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Every child has that attribute that just is difficult for you to deal with, to tolerate, etc. My words to my wife a number of years back was, the most difficult attributes that they exhibit right now ultimately are going to become their greatest attributes. In other words, what we consider to be the most frustrating today is actually going to be their saving grace in 10 years and 20 years down the road. I sort of heard you say that your dad was saying that, right? So, the second thought that I had as you were talking about your dad not really knowing how to deal with, some of those traits that you exhibited as a child is the difference between knowledge and wisdom, right? There's a big, big difference.
Oh yeah.
Knowledge is right here. Knowledge is something you get from a book. Knowledge is
Yeah.
something you get from the notes that you take down at the psychology seminar, right?
Yeah.
At Harvard or wherever it is that you go. Wisdom, however, is when you take that knowledge and you actually live it out and
Yeah.
you apply it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is a wide divide. That is a wide divide, right? From taking knowledge and converting it into wisdom. And sometimes I think that as a society, it's really easy for us to intellectualize things, to learn things, and you've heard this. We hear it all the time in politics, right? Where people are just sort of word vomiting stuff that they've heard over and over, and they're just sort of repeating it, but it's not wisdom. They haven't lived it out. They haven't applied it. And again, it's such a wide, wide divide, right? And God bless your dad, man. I'm sure that he, struggled with that aspect of parenting as we all do. We all struggle at times as parents, right? We're humans. There's a finiteness to our patience, to our understanding. And so firsthand, I can understand how he may have struggled with that, but I would attribute that again to that divide, right, between knowledge and wisdom. Go ahead, brother. I interrupted you.
Oh, no. That's exactly, I mean, it's just crazy. Like what you said with wisdom is exactly the reason that he gave. Cause I'd ask him, I'd be like, man, I was a little bit of an a-hole anyway. I probably wouldn't have been ready to hear anything, you know what I mean? But why didn't you tell me? And he kind of gave me like this offhanded sort of compliment. It was in front of my brother too. Like my brother was a published author. He's no longer with us. I'll get to that part in a second. Or he's with us, but just in the cloud. But he said like, in terms of, he's like, speaking of intellect, he's like, honestly, like when it comes to me, your mother, your brother and stuff like that, we are, I think, right here intellectually in terms of like our commitment to knowledge. But he looked at me and he said, he's like, I'm at this point in time, I'm a basketball player, a football player, a rapper already on the streets. I'm already into selling drugs almost at about, 12, 13 years old, definitely already smoking weed, all that kind of stuff, drinking. And he looks at me and he's like, but I've had some successes. And he's like, so intellectually, I think like, because an intellectual is going to define intellect also as somebody's committed to it. So he's realizing, and he's like, but your intuition is incredible. Like when you get out of your own head, there's nobody that can, like nobody at this table wants to talk to you because you'll run circles around us. That's that cellular intelligence that comes here. And because my dad really didn't hammer me down with Jungian archetypes and give me the quantum mechanics at the time that was available and all that kind of stuff, I kind of picked it up through osmosis. And it was one of those things where this wisdom was kind of burbling up in my body, and it saved my ass on so many occasions. When my head finally would get out of the way, there'd just be a power that would rise up. And the difference between knowledge and wisdom, you can tell with a politician. Like politicians reading a script, it's knowledge, doesn't feel as authentic at all. If you can wake me up at 4 a.m. and say, hey, Joe, can you give me the quantum code for joy? And I can just tell you, yeah, absolutely. That's in the pineal gland. It goes from the heart to it goes to the heart through the neck to the back of the head. It's generated by serotonin that's produced in the gut. If you ruin your gut lining and serotonin, that's going to be a problem for the joy. Joy is with serotonin. It's not with dopamine in the head. That's wisdom. Okay. And that's wisdom. It's coming directly from here, and it's coming directly from personal experience. Doesn't even need to be all that complicated or anything like that, but there's a much bigger difference between the ownership. And so to continue the story, we have, there's too much to weed through in terms of my, like, I guess, escapades, but I've always been a rebel. Like I've always had a huge problem with authority. If you tell me I can't do something, I want to do it. I've always been an addict, not really a chemical addict as much as I've looked like. I've been an addict to anything that would spike dopamine in the head, an extreme skier, anything like that. And so, but substances obviously has been a big part of my life too as well. Can
I tell you, bro?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I tell you?
Yeah.
I about 10 it's probably been about 10 years, maybe a little bit longer. I went through some stuff in life and, in my relationship with my spouse that I felt like I needed to go seek help. And I went to go see a therapist because I couldn't make sense of it. After consulting with them, after having this very, open conversation with them and filling out several surveys and several forms. I don't know if you've ever been to a counselor before, but
Oh, for sure.
after filling this out, the doctor basically diagnosed me with a condition called clinical grandiosity. I don't know if you know what that is.
I do. I've been diagnosed with it.
So I say that because when you are diagnosed with clinical grandiosity, the most dangerous thing to you is pride. The most dangerous thing to you is living outside of this real world, right? Because in your head, part of this diagnosis basically dictates that you don't live in the real world. You don't believe that consequences apply to you. You don't believe that, if you jump off a building, you're going to die. Of course, physics and gravity are going to say something very different, right? But
Oh, yeah.
when individuals are in a very bad spot that are diagnosed with this condition, it's hard for them to tell the difference between the real world and a fantasy world, right? And so as I'm hearing you
100%.
talk, I wonder how many individuals who struggle with addiction, with an addictive personality, really are just addicted to pride and are addicted to themselves, right? And I have my own
100%.
theories. I have my own
100%.
theories about how I was conditioned to essentially believe that, or to essentially succumb to that condition.
Oh, 100%.
And we'll get into that in a different episode.
100%.
But I wonder if, as you were dealing with some of these seasons in your life, shall we call them, good or bad, they made you who you are. And I love who you are, man. You're an awesome dude. I think you're a brilliant guy. I love talking to you. But I wonder if that was part of the reason too.
Oh no,
if you say that you've been-
100%, 100%. It fits in with the whole multiple personalities type of thing. It's just a different energy coming up in my body, and then I've never fit into society. I just didn't think it applied to me. If the rule was stupid, it was stupid. It was stupid, and I would get away with it. Period. And I did get away with a lot because I believed I would, but I haven't got away with all everything. I had to stop playing football because the head coach was the detective of the police, force of Princeton, New Jersey, where we had moved. I had to stop playing football because I got arrested for selling a quarter pound of weed after the basketball game at Hoagie Haven. You know what I mean? Just because, when the cops busted down my door, I just pissed off. You know what I mean? Like, freaking kidding me? And my mom and dad are coming out in their bathrobes and stuff like that. Cops are all in my room rifling through my stuff. I'm talking to them in, like the craziest tone. I said, "This my 14-year-old son?" You know what I mean? Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's, the kind of darkness it is. And it's because I just didn't, it was not fair that it applied to me. It's a dang grass out of the ground and I sold it to her because she wanted some. You know what I mean? And those
why
rules
am I
don't...
getting in trouble? She's the one that wanted it.
Yeah, and that's seriously, it took me like days to. I was in the youth center pissed off about it, right? So that's been a giant part of my life. Clinical grandiosity. I mean, really, if we want to make it simple, I'll say it like this: sin is the disease, Christ is the healer. And what I mean by that is that I don't mean sin by like, oh, Joe's a bad boy because he smokes weed or something. What I mean is this: like, there's a bullseye on how we're supposed to act. And that bullseye includes all of society, including some rules that probably don't really or shouldn't really apply, but we condescend for the sake of the whole. We hit the bullseye. We become, like the Bible says, all things to all people so that we might win some. And we're not self-centered. And you nailed it right there. Pride is just, I live like there's a mirror and that's all there is. It's just a mirror. Narcissism. I'm a narcissist. I get lost in my own stuff. I make a song, I'm listening to it 40 times. Ooh, that's dope. Ooh, that's dope. Ooh, that's dope. And there's some other cool music out there that I could be listening to, and I forget because I'm listening to my stuff, right? Like, and that's still an active force in my life to a certain degree, but now at least I'm aware of it, right? At least I can say that's part of my darkness. If you hear a kind of brashful attitude in what I do, chances are you should check me on that. Say, Joe, where are you looking? Are you looking at me? Are you looking at you? Are you kind of concerned with how you're talking? You're like, you seem wrapped up in yourself a little bit. I'll receive that. You see what I mean? Like, if I'm outward focused, see, here's the solution to this whole narcissism, grandiosity disorder, whatever they want to put it for the pharmacists. Here's the thing. If I'm focused on you and I'm not focused on me and I'm caring about you, and I let go of myself, it goes away. It's just a focus issue. It's just a science issue.
Yes. I love how easy it just rolls off the tongue, right? Like, here's the answer to the world's problems. Here's the answer to the world's problem. It's this easy, man. Like, that's all we have to do. Time out.
Yeah.
So the reality of it is, and you said something earlier that made me think about, when we talk to people, we should talk to them we should listen to them with a yes.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's that pride, right? It's that grandiosity. It's that narcissistic side of us that shuts us down, and we become very, very poor listeners because we don't believe that anybody has anything more valuable to say than we do.
Oh,
I walked in the room. Everybody needs to play second fiddle now, right? I walked in the room. So you know what? I'm here now. You can sit down.
You can sit down. Hey, but let me interject real quick. The light side of that, okay, isn't just the quick solution. And honestly, yeah, the solution is so very simple too. I mean, there's so many simple commands in all the world religions that are so simple, like golden rule, do unto others as we would have done unto yourself. Just do it. But nobody actually does that 100% of the time, right? Like the solutions are actually very simple. But actually applying the solutions is where we got to get out of this totally. We got to be crucified. Jesus said dead. Jesus said, there's no more. And Paul said, I don't even exist anymore. It's just Christ through me. Like, do I believe Paul? Like, did Paul reach that level of enlightenment or not? Like, or maybe just when he was writing to us. But I know for a fact that I could tell you some stuff that'll make seem life is like super freaking easy. All you got to do is this, and all you got to do is ask my wife. It does not happen all the time. Okay, so let me qualify that. Okay, it does not. But there have been major improvements. Okay, there have been major improvements, especially lately, especially after a wonderful trip to Colorado. I mean, look, a couple of months ago, I had decided not to do any Christian stuff anymore. I was just going to go over to the occult side and deal with them because I was finished with it. I was totally finished with it. And then that darkness, because I live in a Christian household, that I had created this Christian household. My wife still wants this Christian household. It caused a whole bunch of problems because now I have a whole bunch of followers, a whole bunch of people who want me for the wrong reasons, and I'm serving them just like a magician, right? Like I've created this alter ego, alter personality, very harmful, very dark. But again, I'm one of those few that if you tell me, hey, Satan's going to get you, I'm like, where's he at? Then where's he at then? You know what I mean? Like anything can come in here. You know what I mean? Like as long as they can behave, anything can come in here. Whatever you want me to be scared of, that's what I'm going to. And so the shadow of that, right? Like that kind of shadow thing at the top, when you got someone that can walk into a room and sit at the table and think that everyone should hear them talk, that's actually somebody probably that should be talking as long as they can humble themselves because they're over the whole fear of man thing. They know that they're supposed, their gift basically is operating in them, but unfortunately the guy upstairs really knows he's gifted and then his gift's just going to shut off because he won't be able to get it's a two-way street, right? Like a good conversation includes everybody at the table and lifts everybody up. And so it's a good thing to be grandiose. It's a good thing to be narcissistic if it's darkness admitted and surrendered. They say, look, I know I should be speaking, But until I can get myself out of the way, I'm going to listen to you guys for a second. We have to understand the issue isn't I'm no longer grandiose. I'm no longer a narcissist. It's just not part of who I am. I cast it out. I cast it away from me. No, it's about making that vibration coherent. And so we're going to be talking about frequency a lot on this show. And because everything is made out of frequency, everything is made out of vibration at the atomic level, at the micro level. And so it's a matter of a coherent vibration versus an incoherent one. Think about static, for example. Static is an incoherent vibration. And so if we have static, like let's say going, at about 109.74 hertz, I want to get that static up to 111. Right there. I want to make a small minor change that's going to make it coherent for me, and I want to honor myself. That doesn't mean if I'm low static, I'm not trying to go, okay, give me the highest vibration, the best, 999, all freaking coherent and everything like that. No, I'm going to try to make those minor changes in my life and acknowledge who I am and just be very transparent. And then we're going to find the miracle that others will lift us up. Others will say, if you're narcissistic and you can say you're a narcissist, all of a sudden you're one of the most interesting things to people, because nobody wants to say that they're a narcissist. It's the big buzzword out there. You see it on Facebook. My husband's a narcissist. Uh-oh, watch out for Keith the narcissist. And Keith's like, I've never been a narcissist. Look, we take ownership. And then that vibration that's staticky starts to get a little bit more coherent, because at the top of that vibration, you have Carlos Alberto on stage rocking out until 5,000 people. What you pick one of those 5,000 people may even have a musical gift, but they might not have Carlos's grandiosity. You put them on that same stage, all of a sudden their music gift goes out the window. You see, because they don't have the confidence, right? So that shadow of narcissism becomes the angel of confidence, as long as we can get out of ourselves and really be a servant.
Man, I'll tell you, man, that is such a complex theme to dive into. On one hand, you've got an attribute that is going to help you ignore fear, ignore the fear of failure, ignore embarrassment, because that's the one attribute that's going to put you up in front of 10,000 people. Actually, bro, it wasn't 5, it was 10. Let's get it right. Let's get it right, homie.
We was doing the minors. Get it right.
But, it's very complex, because you're absolutely right. Again, coming back to the statements that we both made earlier, the things that sometimes we struggle most with, that divide us the most from our social groups, sometimes tend to be the best thing about us when it comes to our direction in life. And look, here's the reality, bro. We all have some asshole in us.
All the time.
Excuse
all
me.
The time. You got the first curse word out, and I'm ready to go. Oh my goodness.
No, I think you said something before that. But that's the reality, dude. And look, this isn't a Christian show. I don't want people to get it twisted. We're not going to be preaching at people. But the reality is that Jesus came for the assholes. He didn't come for Ward Cleaver. He didn't come 100%. For,
100%.
Bob Ross.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He came for the people that needed saving.
Yeah.
He came for the sick.
I was one of those sick. I definitely was one of those sick. Nobody evangelized to me, by the way. I had decided after I got kicked out of my sports endeavors to actually enter into an outlaw lifestyle at the age of 17. So I moved from the house, moved in with a pimp named Goldie in North Carolina. Shout out Goldie. He's no longer, actually, he's leading a wonderful life today. Yeah, a pimp named Goldie.
How progressive would that have been, like a female pimp? Man, that would have been like...
would have been productive. There were some...
That would have been progressive, boy.
Raleigh, North Carolina, back in like 1997, 98 was a zoo. But so I went down there in a basketball tournament earlier, fell in love with it, made a few connections, and then my mom and dad, after like my second or third arrest, were just happy to get me out of there. So they bankrolled me. I came up with this bullcrap story and got out of the house. Now that led to an outlaw lifestyle where I was actually kind of like, if you ever watched the show Breaking Bad, I was running chemicals for meth cooks in California. Now, it wasn't exactly like Breaking Bad status, like not like Chicken Man shops and all the fancy stuff down low or whatever. But some of these get-ups were good. I was dealing with the worst of the worst in terms of society, the Aryan Brotherhood gangs, the Black Guerrilla family, all the, everybody at the top of these industries, because we were the ones supplying the chemicals. The chemicals usually was to the cooks and everything like that. So, and then my younger brother Jim followed me into that lifestyle. He has a book on some of the adventures called Leaving Dirty Jersey, more focused around his time out there. He was less with the chemicals and more actually just dealing the meth, right? And that led me into prison for, I don't know, jail and prison for about 4 years of my life, 3-4 years of my life. And it was on my last occasion where I had gotten locked up. And I had just been out for like 2 months, maybe. I'd gotten out of Delano, a correctional facility in California, and I'd gotten out. And 2 months later, I'm right on the way back in. But in the back of the police car, like I had been up on meth for about a week, and we stayed up for business purposes on this thing. You're dealing with these people. You're doing this. You're doing this. You're doing this. So it wasn't like the first couple times about getting high. Then it was about staying alive, type of thing. And so we're up there for about like a week on the meth, and something happened to me like in the back of that police car. I was having this kind of mental break combined with like what I felt must have been a stroke or something. Like I literally saw my energy leaving my body, and it was like I couldn't remember my name. I couldn't remember anything, and I had remembered on an acid trip that I had done earlier that there is a being that exists. Like I'd kind of encountered the numinous light, but I was sort of a bit of an asshole myself, and decided that whatever. I was just going to play with my acid trip. I probably could have had a divine experience then, but I saw enough. I was like, oh, is it in me? It sort of seemed like I didn't know where it was coming from. So I knew that something kind of existed, even though like I didn't believe my parents' mythological bullcrap. I didn't believe their stuff all that much. I mean, I liked their science about it, but I was just whatever. And I certainly didn't have exposure to Christianity, except for the fact that we were an intellectual family and I was expected to know what it was. So I had, basically that. I wouldn't say I didn't know who Jesus was or anything, but I certainly didn't believe he actually rose from the grave in 33 AD, or it was like a really historical person that was like, I discounted everything. And then so at that time in the back of the car, I just said, whatever that light was, whatever got, I know you exist, and you can have me now if you want me before I die. You know what I mean? Just kind of one of those prayers, right?
Wow.
Not even really that scared, I would say, but more of a practical purpose. Like I seen this thing, I felt this disgusting feeling in my body, and I was just like, maybe it's just time. Like, just let me throw this Hail Mary up there. And what happened in the back of this police car, and it was picked up by CBN too, the testimony on there, if you Google Joe Salant, Salant, it was the craziest thing. There was peace that just came all over me right away. And then I felt like I'd eaten, like I hadn't eaten anything, on that crystal meth, right? Like we were actually shooting it in the arm. Like, all of a sudden I'd felt better than I'd ever felt in my life, and I felt natural and whole. Previously, all the energy that I had going in that car, that cop was like swerving to get to the jail. He didn't know what was going on or who he had in his car. Halfway through, I have this experience. It's not auditory. Like all this is happening in my inner space, right? And then I get to the jail, Southwest Detention Facility in Murrieta, California, connected to something I call the Miracle in Temecula. We can talk about it on another episode. But the craziest thing was I get out of the car, the cop looks at me and says, "Oh my God, you're not the same." What? He's like looking at me twice. He's like, he's like, "Let me see your arms." Like, he's like looking at me like it's like the track marks were gone. Like, it was a crazy, like maybe I just had more flesh over them or something, or I bubbled up with water or something. Like, I don't know if that was necessarily whatever, but I was different, and I knew something was different. And then the name Jesus comes into my Jesus. It was kind of like just a Jesus. Like the thought just kept hitting my head. Jesus, 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 Jesus. Then I get to my cell, right? And all over the floor are these Christian tracts, okay, like the salvation tracts, the chick tracts where you confess this or whatever. And so I'm like, at that point in time, I'm an occult kid, but didn't really take that seriously, all that kind of stuff. I'm just in there confessing these things because this is what happened to me. And then, I read the Bible and all that other kind of stuff. And it launches into, when I get out of prison eventually, I go into a Christian men's home. And I just, by the time I got to that Christian men's home, I'd read the Bible 3 or 4 times in there. And there was a purity about my faith, man. But there were things that I believed. Like I believed at that early time, just reading it without any supervision, like when there was a command like "Be holy, for your Father in heaven is holy," I would read that command and I would say, "Well, there must be a way for that to be now." And I would just be different. Like those early days in the cell, like I was in a hard place. Like it was a level 4 yard in Calusa because I had violence on my books for other reasons in jail, and so. But I get there, and my cellie is a. I mean, he's a of the wood category. He was one of the shot callers for the white car, and he's yoked, everything like that. He's aggressive towards me and everything. But my new faith was like, it wasn't this kind of, oh, I'm a Christian, don't do this or whatever the case may be. It just gave me a boldness, like. To not just tolerate him, but to see where the opening was so I could share what I had with him. And I kept trying to share with him. Probably shouldn't. I mean, he grabbed me up by the neck one time and put me up against the wall. And
I kept sharing with him.
I couldn't beat Surgeon at that time. I would have fought him, but I couldn't have beat Surgeon, bro. Nah, that wasn't happening, bro. But it was like, and it was just, I thought it was normal. The thing was, in those early days of faith in jail and everything like that, I thought it was normal. And then when I got out, I would meet a lot of people like me, and we're just going to have an amazing life, and it's going to be great. But then, I get out of prison, and I realize that there's all sorts of things about my faith that are not acceptable. So first of all, like, this idea, like when I read through it, and Jesus said that, well, like it introduces the kingdom in the gospel. He's talking about the kingdom of God is at hand. He's saying he's the king. He's saying that these are how we do it. The 2 rules are now love God, love neighbor. It sums up everything else. And we have a different economy. We have a different community. We have a different society, and all that kind of stuff. And then it's going to grow just by osmosis. I get into a home. It's like, what I thought it was going to be is a little different. Like you can't have the holiness now, like fully. You're going to sin. Expect yourself to sin. Not necessarily the worst advice, but to somebody like me who was already kind of believing that if I did sin, I had an advocate and I shouldn't be sinning. Like, you don't want to tell Joe Salant from New Jersey he's got a couple sins up the sleeve that he can get away with, right? Like, so, like already, like my armor was sort of being chipped away, just because my darkness is so bad, and I come from that line where hey, it's kind of crazy. So my experience, like basically in the Christian church, I've had a good degree of success as a minister, a gospel rap artist, released as apologist for Reasons to Believe an organization, did a lot of teaching. I traveled the country with several different outfits, teaching Christian apologetics. But what happened to me very quickly was, and I think it was about like 8 months into the men's home, like when I first got in there, like during the worship services, I'm like dancing around. I'm like, the power's within inside me. I see everybody else with their hands up, looking somewhere up there. And I'm like, where are you looking at? Where's God? He's like, oh, God in heaven. And it's like these little things. And then the pastor's looking at me saying, oh, you're looking great. He's drawing attention to me. He's like, you're dancing around a lot. Like, and I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't do the dancing that much. And okay, hold on. I want to come up through this correctly. And somehow that faith where I was following the rules of what their theology said, their 16 tenets, Jesus has come back sometime in the future, not now, you'll never be perfect now. This all stuff that I didn't really know how to handle theologically yet, which we're going to be covering on this show, that would brand me as a heretic, which I don't mind. You know what I mean? Like, I totally don't mind if you want to. We're all heretic in some level. We're all off somewhere. I could describe it this way: the faith originally that I had was a heart faith. It was in my body. It was a heart faith. It was a wisdom, and then it somehow went from wisdom to knowledge. It went to, what can I prove up here? What can I do up here? How can I make God happy by demonstrating his faith? And so by the time I had the intellectual ability to refute maybe this sect of Christians, I had joined another sect of Christians where their doctrine now though it would have I would have had a problem with it. The guy coming out of prison wouldn't have been able to really thrive in there. But then in the Reformed communities and all the places where the Spirit's kind of stamped out or reserved for some time in the past, I was fine there. You know, I was totally fine with the faith being something up here, with my reward being sometime in the future. And right now I'm going to get this money teaching you these lessons. And so I kind of fell right into it. And it took tragedy over my life. It took the death of my family, my mom, brother, and father. James Salant, Lydia Salant, and Nathan Salant passed away between 2017, 2019. And with a head-based faith, I didn't know how to deal with it. I just was numb. I was just like, okay, well, I don't know. I didn't even feel anything. So I sunk into a pill addiction, really bad, heading out of that. And that was just basically so that I wasn't even using the kind of drugs or pills that I would if I was going to get high. I was just taking everything that I possibly could from the psychiatrist and the doctor to get myself in a position where I could just work and do the things for my family. Ministry was out the window. By that time, it's like I had already made several courageous stands, I believe, against like Christian nationalism because I was with a Christian nationalist ministry, and then against the pro-life movement because I was in a pro-life movement and I saw what kind of snake pit that was at the highest levels. There's a lot of authentic pro-lifers out there, but if you go to Washington, D.C., you'll see what's up. It's a money pit. And so it's just one of those things where it's like I'd made these courageous stands. There was something in my body always working. That dragon was always trying to come up and you're more than this, Joe. This faith is more than this. That wasn't the thing that saved you in the police car. Nobody came to you with an apologetics 10-point presentation demonstrating the resurrection beyond a reasonable doubt. Nobody came to you with the cosmological argument for the existence of God. The Spirit hit you when you were about to die. And then all of a sudden you were alive and you were feeling that. And then when you read the Bible with nobody teaching you, the Spirit was reading that with you. And you need to go back to your original interpretations. I kept on kind of feeling that. Go back to your first love type of thing. Go back to when nobody was talking to you and you're just reading the Bible for itself and all that other kind of stuff. You didn't get it filtered through 2,000 years of tradition, and you're going to get some cool things going on. I'd like to say it was a clean break and an easy thing, and I've been totally free of darkness for years and years. That isn't the case, but I've certainly come to a point in my life now where I'm off all pills, been so for a while. I rely on no substance outside of the substance that's in my body. I'm not an abstinence person, you know what I mean? Like cannabis is fine, psychedelics are fine if they have their purpose in your life and you're doing it for the right reason, not just to party. Psychedelics knock your ego out of the way. I'm not going to say because of my experience as an addict that somebody else shouldn't do something, or even that I couldn't use something responsibly. But I will say that all of these other chemical substances in my life that were killing me and destroying my body are no longer a part of my life. And unless I have some kind of crazy disease or cancer or arms chopped off, they will never be part of my life again. I mean, I can sit there and smoke a joint. I'm not going to smoke 10 more and then go do crack the next day. And that's simply because of what God has done in my life through wisdom. And I'm speaking to you as what they would consider an addict with an active addiction right now. That breaks all those kind of rules. I mean, and you can ask my wife too. There is no substance abuse problem in this present moment. And that's because through everything that happened, and I mean, look, through this period, through this journey, my wife, I got with her when I was with Prophecy Records, back with, shout out Prophet X, you know what I mean? What's good, fam?
What up?
You know what I mean? What? My man, Upwards, the whole 9 yards, Conscious, everybody. Hey, you're going to see Conscious on this show for sure. It was like I met my wife, 2008 through this ministry I was doing, this gospel rap ministry. From that time that I met her to the time today, I was wild on drugs on several occasions for short windows, not large windows. But when things broke down, like sometimes, things broke down. So my wife's had to deal with that. And by the grace of God, I have this woman who can, through all of her pain and through all of her trauma, look at me and see honestly, you know what, this is actually more of a darkness and a condition. And so she had that discernment and that love for me, and she stayed with me since. We have 3 beautiful kids, 15-year-old kid, a 15-year-old boy, a 10-year-old daughter, and an 8-year-old boy. And those kids, man, they're new covenant children. You know what I mean? And
Wow,
there's no
amazing,
reason.
my man.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So
That's
and then
amazing,
I guess
man.
that brings us to the current moment right now. You know what I mean? On a short flyover right there for the last 8 minutes, but. You have any comments
listen,
on
man, you know what? That's what this show is about. That's what this show's about. It's about being real. It's about being authentic. It's about talking about not just our good skin, but talking about our warts as well. And my
100%.
man, I celebrate the fact that you are here today. And I celebrate the fact that you've been able to gain wisdom and strength from your journey in the past.
Yeah.
May your family rest in peace, my man. That breaks my heart hearing that. But to our audience, this is what it's about. You're going to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. We're going to talk about it. We're going to argue. We're going to fight. We might cuss a little bit. But that's what we do. We're imperfect people that need hope, that need a savior. We need saving. And if you're being authentic yourself, again, to our audience, you need help and you need saving. That's what it's about. Let's stick together. Let's encourage each other. On a final note, my man, that's what we do. So everybody, welcome to Oil and Water.
Welcome.